Few leaders of the 20th century have left behind a legacy as divisive and emotionally charged as Saddam Hussein. Throughout his presidency, he projected the image of a fearless Arab strongman, someone who brought order, power, and pride to Iraq. Yet behind that facade of strength lay brutality, paranoia, and catastrophic decisions that pushed an entire nation into fear, war, and economic collapse. This is the story of how a boy born in extreme poverty became one of the most feared men on the planet, then fell dramatically, only to re-emerge after death as a controversial symbol of strength for many in the Middle East today. Saddam's story is not just political history. It is a narrative shaped by harsh childhood experiences, crushing ambition, regional rivalries, and the violent currents that swept the Middle East across the 20th century. By the end of his reign, Iraq had been reshaped forever, sometimes for better, often for far worse. A harsh beginning, the making of a strong man. Saddam Hussein, whose name roughly translates to one who confronts, entered the world in 1937 under extremely grim conditions. His family lived in a mud hut near Tikrit without electricity, clean water, or basic comforts. Hunger and deprivation were a daily reality. Even worse was the cruelty of his stepfather, Hassan al-Majid, nicknamed Hassan the Liar, who regularly beat the young boy with a tar-coated stick. Everything changed when Saddam was 10 years old. He was taken in by his uncle, Khairullah Talfa, a former army officer, schoolteacher, and fierce nationalist. Under his uncle's roof, Saddam finally learned to read and write. More importantly, he was exposed to stories of Iraq's humiliation under European rule. After World War I, Britain and France had dismantled the Ottoman Empire and drawn new borders without regard for tribal loyalties or ethnic divisions. These decisions created a fragile Iraq ripe with political turmoil, resentment, and power struggles. Growing up amid this turbulence shaped Saddam's worldview. The belief that Iraq needed a strong, unshakable ruler who would not bow to foreign influence. Entering the political arena. In 1955, Saddam followed his uncle to Baghdad. Influenced heavily by Khairullah, he joined the Ba'ath Party, a small but ambitious political movement that dreamed of uniting all Arab nations into a single powerful state, free from Western control. Saddam was not yet a thinker or strategist, so he proved his loyalty by serving as muscle during political demonstrations. 3 years later, Iraq erupted again. On July 14, 1958, rebellious military officers overthrew the monarchy in a violent coup. General Abdul Karim Qasem rose to power but angered the Baathists by rejecting their vision of pan-Arab unity. They accused him of betrayal, and betrayal demanded blood, the failed assassination, and exile. To eliminate Qasem, Ba'ath leaders organized a hit squad led by young Saddam. On October 7, 1959, the team ambushed the general's car. But instead of executing their carefully planned attack, the assassins panicked, firing wildly. Qasem was injured, one conspirator was killed, and Saddam was shot in the leg. With security forces hunting him, Saddam fled to Egypt, waiting patiently for the political tides to shift again. That shift came in 1963 when Ba'athist officers, possibly with CIA assistance, toppled Qasem. Saddam returned home a hero, married his cousin Sajida, and began his slow climb toward absolute power. Prison, escape, and a return to destiny. But the Ba'ath victory was short-lived. Infighting led to yet another coup in late 1963, this time removing the Ba'athists. Saddam was imprisoned for plotting against the new government. After 2 years behind bars, he staged a daring escape in 1966. The Ba'athists regrouped and successfully launched the July Revolution of 1968. Saddam's mentor Ahmad Hassan al-Bakr became president and appointed him as his right-hand man. By age 31, Saddam Hussein was the second most powerful man in Iraq, building a police state. From this position, Saddam expanded his influence with ruthless efficiency. He installed political officers throughout the military who reported directly to him. Soon he controlled the armed forces, secret police, and the Ba'ath Party itself. Meanwhile, his public image softened. Saddam appeared on television surrounded by his children, projecting the persona of a caring father and patriotic leader. Behind closed doors, however, he preferred luxury, late-night gatherings, and the company of loyalists who fed his ego. Oil wealth and rising power. Saddam's big moment came in 1972 when he engineered the nationalization of the British-controlled Iraq Petroleum Company. Decades of foreign control ended overnight. For the first time, Iraq's vast oil wealth belonged to Iraq. Billions poured into the country. Schools, hospitals, roads, and housing projects expanded rapidly. Education became widely accessible. Poverty shrank. Iraqis began believing their nation could become a regional powerhouse. Saddam also signed massive arms deals, building one of the most powerful militaries in the Middle East. His charisma, wealth, and modernizing efforts made him wildly popular, even more than President Bakr. By 1979, Saddam decided his mentor had become a liability. He forced Bakr to resign and declared himself president of Iraq at just 42 years old. Days later, he staged a dramatic purge of the Ba'ath Party, eliminating dozens of officials he suspected of disloyalty. The era of Saddam's absolute rule had begun. A catastrophic war with Iran? In 1979, Iran underwent its own revolution led by Ayatollah Khomeini. The new Islamic Republic openly declared its intention to spread revolutionary ideals across the region. This terrified Saddam, especially since Iraq's population was majority Shia, while the ruling elite, including Saddam, were Sunni. Seeing Iran militarily weak after the revolution, Saddam launched an attack on September 22, 1980. He expected a quick victory. Instead, the Iran-Iraq War dragged on for 8 brutal years. Saddam personally directed military operations despite lacking experience. Thousands of Iraqi soldiers died because generals were too afraid to contradict him. To maintain the illusion that life was normal, Saddam imported vast quantities of goods to prevent shortages. As the war dragged on, he borrowed billions from Gulf states, such as Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, all of whom feared the spread of Iran's revolutionary ideology. One of the darkest chapters of his rule came in 1988, when he unleashed chemical weapons on Kurdish civilians in Halabja. Thousands died in minutes. The world was horrified, but Saddam believed the attack sent a message. Dissent would be crushed without mercy. When the war finally ended that year, more than 1 million people had been killed or wounded. Iraq was financially devastated, drowning in debt and desperate for cash. The invasion of Kuwait and global backlash. When Kuwait refused to forgive Iraq's wartime loans, Saddam reacted with rage. In August 1990, he invaded Kuwait, claiming it historically belonged to Iraq. For a brief moment, Saddam controlled a staggering 20% of the world's oil reserves. But the triumph was short-lived. The United Nations imposed strict sanctions and demanded Iraq's withdrawal. Saddam dismissed their warnings. Soon, a massive US-led coalition was assembled to confront him. By early 1991, Operation Desert Storm crushed Saddam's forces in just 6 weeks. His army was devastated, rebellions erupted throughout Iraq, and once again he clung to power through sheer brutality. Years of isolation and defiance. Throughout the 1990s, Iraq suffered under some of the harshest sanctions in modern history. Food and medicine were scarce. The economy collapsed. But Saddam and his inner circle continued to live lavishly by smuggling oil and manipulating the UN's Oil for Food program. When UN inspectors searched for weapons of mass destruction, Saddam obstructed them repeatedly. Not because he had such weapons, but because he believed ambiguity protected him from enemies. This strategy backfired disastrously. After the 9/11 attacks, the United States targeted Saddam, accusing him, without evidence, of supporting extremist groups and possessing WMDs. In March 2003, the US and its allies invaded Iraq. Saddam's government collapsed in weeks. The fall and execution. Hunted across the country, Saddam went into hiding until American forces captured him in December 2003 near Tikrit. His trial lasted 3 years, filled with dramatic outbursts and denials. Ultimately, he was found guilty of crimes against humanity and executed by hanging on December 30th, 2006. Just like that, the story of Saddam Hussein, the dictator who once controlled millions, came to an end in a dim room on the day of Eid al-Adha. As we close this chapter on Saddam Hussein's dramatic rise and fall, it becomes clear that history is never black and white. If you want more deep dives into stories that shaped nations, toppled empires, and changed the course of history, make sure you don't leave without supporting this channel. Hit that like button if you found this video insightful, and subscribe so you never miss out on the next powerful chapter from the past.